What's up, guys? K-Dot 357 coming to you here this Monday evening, February the 12th. Listen, I know most of the time when I come to you, I show you guns and things like that, and we maybe break gun downs, things like that. But listen, I want to talk a little bit about fundamentals tonight. The one thing I want to talk about, this is the key to accurate shooting. It's all in this right here. It's all in the finger. It's all in trigger control, guys. It doesn't matter. Why does it matter how well you can aim if you're still not hitting what you're shooting at? Okay, I see that many times on the range that people are shooting, they're firing their gun, and they're like, "Daggone it, I was aiming dead center. I had the front sight dead center, Kevin, but for some reason or another, I'm hitting low left, high right, off to the left, off right, up, down, whatever." I know what the problem is. Oh, somebody's sending me a text, so I need to get that out of the way. But anyway, it's poor manipulation of the trigger. Poor manipulation of the trigger. So let's talk about that just for a minute. Once again, if you take a target and you look at the holes in that target, if they're not in the center and they're here, there, and everywhere, they're there for one simple reason. When you jerk or slap the trigger, that hole there in that target, if it's off left, off right, whatever, that is because that's the last place the front sight was when you did jerk or slap the trigger. So how'd that happen? You had to move the gun. You move the gun. So you jerk it, but by the time the round goes off, it doesn't hit its mark. So aiming is not the key to good shooting. Honestly, the first thing you need to do is learn how to properly manipulate that trigger, and then we'll get into aiming. Fortunately, well, I don't want to wish any bad situation on someone, but most of the time when these bad things go down, they go down between 3 and 5 yards, okay? So with that said, you don't necessarily have to be the best marksman in the world, but hey, you know, if we need to take that shot from 9 yards, 10, 12, 15 yards away, we want to be able to execute and do it, right? And of course, when you increase your shooting skills and you become more proficient, there comes more confidence as well. So God forbid, if you need this tool one day, this fun tool to go out and have fun with at the range, and it needs to save your bacon one day, you will use it, and you will use it with confidence, okay? That is the single biggest mistake I see on the firing range is poor trigger control. So how do we overcome jerking or slapping the trigger? And what I mean by that, and of course we have no magazine in there, no round in the chamber. All right, so what I mean by that is when you've been given the command to fire or you decide to fire, the finger's here, you're jerking the trigger, just jerking the fire out of the trigger, and you're going to move the front sights. And listen, you don't have to be very far back to move those sights to really throw those rounds off. Obviously, if you're throwing them off 5 inches to the right, if you change nothing and you go back to the 25-yard line, you're probably not even going to hit the target. It's going to be completely off the target. Obviously, the error gets worse the further you come back. Or sometimes I see this, they'll start out slow, but then they'll jerk it. So what should we do? We want the nail of the pad of our finger on the trigger. All right, so that way that encourages a straight pull back to the rear. We can go all the way to the first joint, but we don't need to do that because this gun has a 5.5 pound trigger pull. Most semi-automatics have between 4.5 and 6.5 pounds of trigger. Your revolvers have much more. They have 8, 9, 10, 12 pounds of trigger pull. So sometimes, not always, sometimes one may need the extra strength that you gain in the first joint there. I can take a revolver and still press with the pad of my finger, but for semi-automatics, you can put too much finger, and of course you can put not enough finger and cause you to pull the front sights left, right. Of course, if you jerk it, you can jerk the sights up or down. So what do we want to do? Well, you know, when you have the two-handed grip, you want to have a nice firm hand, a nice firm handshake grip all the way around on the gun. So we want to hold the gun, not a death grip, but you want to hold that gun pretty tight, like you mean it, okay? Put the pad of your finger on the trigger. When you've decided to fire, what we want to do is we want to start in first gear and finish in first gear. Start in first gear and finish in first gear. Bang, the gun fires, it cycles, and then we don't take our finger off the trigger. So let's say we're firing a volley of 3 rounds. We let the slack out slowly. You hear that click? All right, the trigger is reset, the gun's ready to fire again. Okay, very short reset on this Glock here. We take the next shot. Bang. Start in first gear and finish in first gear. The gun cycles, it loads another round, let the slack out, fire. Slack out, fire. Slack out, fire. And, you know, you may say, well, how do you do that and do that pretty quick? after hundreds and hundreds of times of practicing the correct way, your little finger there, or big finger in some cases, knows exactly where to stop, and the trigger resets. Okay, I mean, I can feel the reset in this Glock. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to, when we jerk or slap the trigger, we're jerking it and then we're coming off the trigger, and then we have to sort of reset, if you will. We have to reset the finger back on there. So when you start firing, your finger should never come off that trigger. And it's so funny because when I work with students and I'm saying, all right, don't take your finger off the trigger now, pull the trigger straight back, hold it, and don't let it out until I tell you to. Many, many times they'll let it out. Why do they let it out and they take the finger off the trigger? Is because they've done that hundreds of times. It takes a while to break a bad habit and replace it with a new habit. In this case, with a good habit. All right, so once again, pad on the finger. We start in first gear, we finish in first gear. Slow press. And you might say, well, hey, if I need to fire rounds quickly, how can I do that if I'm starting in first gear and finishing first gear? As time goes on, you practice more and you're able to do that faster and faster and faster until your finger knows where to let off and where to start back. All right, and what's going to happen is you're going to see your shot groups normally like that. Your shot group is happily going to start to tighten up, and that's where you're going to really see a big difference. And I love it as an instructor because I see a big grin come on their face, on the student's face, when their shot group dramatically tightens up. But I tell them, when you leave the range, if you go back to wherever you shoot at and you start back with your old habits again, you're going to be right back to where you were again. And it can take some time of blowing through some rounds to get back to that. So the secret to good shooting is all in trigger control. All in trigger control. It's not aiming. Once again, it don't do any good to aim if you don't know how to manipulate the trigger. So that's my tip of the day. If you want to improve your shooting skills, get better on trigger manipulation. Don't jerk or slap that trigger. All right, I'll throw another video up here. Well, I got to teach a Tuesday concealed carry class tomorrow, so it may be Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, but I'll get another one up here. So till I see you next time, guys, stay armed, stay safe. KDOT 357 coming to you. See ya.